to the council meeting by Zoom, including KJIW and the Helena-West on the world, and anybody else that I might have missed on here. I'm still slow to learn some of this stuff, but it looks like we do have a quorum, so we'll call the meeting to order. And Ms. Ramsey, if you would call the roll.
Forward.
She's present.
Franklin. St. Columbia. Crockett. Davis.
Here.
Etherly.
Wanda's on.
Okay, Ms. Crockett's on.
Yeah. She's connecting now.
Okay.
Ford is here.
Yeah.
Well, again, welcome everybody. I think what I'll do is make an announcement. Well, I would imagine we'll have a couple other people join us. I sent this out to y'all earlier. Earlier this afternoon. Of course, we've all been watching the events unfold around our country and our state after the horrible death and murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. It seems to be different than other events in recent times, and rather than just sort of hunkering down and watching TV like everybody else, I reached out to some of the people in the community, our pastors and others, and asked them for some guidance on what they thought. And actually, I had a constituent instant message me with the suggestion, so I really should give that person credit. And so we started a discussion, and today I announced that a couple of the ideas, not the only ideas, but the two that we felt like were the most, at the end of the day, the most important to do now. Some of the other issues will be taken up by a committee that, and I've asked Naomi Cottoms, who many of you know, who's a longtime community leader, to chair the committee and to help fill out the other members and the agenda. I don't want this to be about me. I'm not going to be on the committee. I want it to be about the community, but I did get some guidance that as mayor, there should be some leadership and discussion on this issue, and I agree with that. Also, asked the pastors, and actually the pastors asked me, and I thought it was a good idea to declare this Sunday a day of prayer in our churches and reflection in our community for the events of the past week, and also to keep in mind pray for our community, our state, our country, the family of George Floyd, and also all the other victims of hate crimes in this country. It might not be a sufficient response, but it is at least a proactive response. And I hope that it also bothers me, and not only me, but after these kinds of things happen in a week or two, a month, 2 months, we start talking about something else, and we don't ever really, or at least I don't think we do, truly follow up on the conversations that are started around these things. My hope is, and Ms. Collins, I should say, agreed to be chairperson, and I hope we have a representative group. I think we will on that committee, but that we continue that discussion and not let it drop because the news has changed. It's clearly a systemic issue in our country, and it's something that each community should deal with, and with our history especially. So I wanted to make that announcement at the beginning. All right, Ms. Ramsey, we'll move on to the minutes.
Do the minutes.
I think April 21st is at the next
April 21st,
And Joe's on.
May 5th, May 19th.
Okay, do we want to deal with the minutes of April 21st?
Yes.
Is there a motion to adopt the minutes of April 21st? Don't hear a motion on the minutes of April 21st.
Joe St. Columbia, I so move.
Mr. St. Columbia moves adoption of the minutes of April 21st. Is there a second?
Second.
I didn't hear the second there. Who was that?
Davis.
Ms. Davis? Okay. All right, motion and second. If no other discussion, call the roll.
Davis,
Yes.
Columbia,
Yes.
Crockett,
Yes.
Franklin,
Yes.
Etherly,
Yes.
Ford,
Yes.
6 yes.
Okay, motion passes. The minutes are adopted. And the next minutes are May the 5th. Is that right?
Yes.
Has everyone had a chance to look over those minutes? And if so, is there a motion to adopt the minutes of May the 5th?
Joe St. Columbia, I so move.
Mr. St. Columbia moves adoption of the minutes from May the 5th. Is there a second?
Second.
And Ms. Davis, I think that was who seconded.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Any other discussion? If not, call the roll.
Etherly,
Yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Davis, Crockett,
Yes.
Franklin,
Abstain. I was absent.
St. Columbia.
Yes.
Okay, 5 yes, 1 abstain. Next is May 19th.
All right, if everybody's had a chance to read the May 19th minutes, is there a motion to adopt?
So move.
Mr. Franklin moves adoption of the minutes from May 19th. Is there a second?
Joe St. Columbia seconds.
St. Columbia seconds the motion. Any other discussion? If not, call the roll.
Franklin,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Etherly,
Yes.
Ford,
I believe I was absent, abstain.
Crockett,
Yes.
St. Columbia,
Yes.
5 yes.
And motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Ramsey. We'll move on now to the treasurer's report. Mr. Turner.
Well, I submitted the April's treasurer's report. I emailed everybody. I think I dropped it off to everybody except for, I think Don. I think I don't usually try to give Don a hard copy because, he can print it out most of the time. That's my assumption. So, but I did email it to everybody and I dropped it off to most people. That's what I wanted to make just a quick comment about the sales tax revenue so far. I know some people may have been concerned about how it's been affecting our sales taxes, this COVID pandemic right now. But so far, we haven't had a negative impact. The city sales tax held steady in February, March, and April, and actually increased about $26,000 in May. And the county sales tax held steady for a couple of months, and it actually increased in May also, about, looks like $30,000. And when I did some checking with DFNA, what's boosting our sales tax right now, I'm sure everybody knows this, are the grocery stores and the general merchandise stores like Walmart, Family Dollar, and Dollar General. So right now we're not having any significant negative impact on our sales tax revenues right now.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Any questions for Mr. Turner? And I'm going to ask you again, as I usually do, just speak up because I can't really. I'm on my phone tonight. So
Yeah, it's Chris Franklin. I got a couple questions.
Mr. Franklin.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Franklin.
He's got his mic off.
Mr. Franklin, if you can hear us, we can't hear you.
My mic is up. Can you hear me?
Oh, now we can hear you.
I can hear you now.
Hey, have there been any purchases, like big purchases made without yet? I saw some things in the past couple of days with the police department. I saw some ATVs. I saw those out on the street. And I know, Mayor, that that's way beyond your spending limit. And we didn't authorize that. So has anybody on the call on this Zoom were notified about the ATVs that was bought? There are 2 that I saw on the street. And you know, when it comes to you asking us to clean up the budget and stuff, these are unauthorized purchases if it's over your spending authority, which I think it is. But those are the things that worry me when you ask us to clean up something and it's 2 ATVs bought. It's a side-by-side, there's a 4-wheeler. And I'm sure, and this is in the treasury, this is not, I hadn't saw the person in the treasury report, but I know since the last time we met, they were bought. Mr. Turner, is this in the treasury report on what page? Because I'm not, I don't have my report in front of me. I'm out doing something for my mom, but I just want to know, these 2 purchases was way above the mayor's spending authority. And
They aren't in the April's. I gave you guys the April's treasurer's report. I give you May's treasurer's report the next council meeting.
yes, sir. But Mayor, can you?
Yeah. So let me respond to that. Is Andre on the phone? Andre on the call?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm on the call.
Okay. As you know, we had a state of emergency issued approximately, I think it was April the 13th, 14th, somewhere in that neighborhood. And for the first 30 days of that emergency, state law gives me the authority to make emergency purchases. So what I did was I asked the police department and if there were anything that we felt like we needed to deal with all of the crises that we're dealing with, that we needed to go ahead and get. And the response I got were the 4-wheelers because of the crime that we've seen. And then also to go ahead and get the Skycop, the mobile Skycop, which was delivered yesterday. All of that took time for it to be delivered, but the decisions were made by me, and I take full responsibility for it. And I'm actually pretty excited about it. We just got them, and we've already made some arrests with the 4-wheelers. But that's it during that 30-day period. And it has already helped with our crime. One of the developments that we've seen lately is that when we pursue someone, they're able to escape through the woods, either on 4-wheelers or bikes or what have you. And that's sort of a new development. I'm told these things, every year or two, different things are discovered or that are used that sort of take time for law enforcement to catch up. And that was one of them. And within a very short period, we had our first arrest. And one of them was the individual that is a suspect of shooting over on Walker Levy. And we've also made some other arrests, but that was a pretty big one. Any more questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry. some kind of way I got off the call, but I didn't get to hear your response to it. But that's my concern. I understand the treasurer is saying that we in good. We're not losing revenue just yet, but to have a good working relationship, I think that it would have been helpful if you had to just notified us of the spending. Whatever the purchase was. I don't know if you all even, since I got off my phone, I got off the call for just a moment. I don't know if you all discussed the total purchasing price of that. What was the total price of both of those off-road?
They were, for both of them, the price was $19,000, I believe.
$19,000. So, when you found out that we needed those, why couldn't you have notified us? If we're gonna do things in decent and in order, the mayor has to be willing to work with us. When it's something, and I'm not arguing or going back and forth, but Mayor, you have to remember, when you want something, you're ramming down our throat, say, hey, I'm the mayor, you all don't handle day-to-day operation. But in fairness, and you always say in going forward, and like you studied going backwards, because when going forward, you'll let the council know, I don't want to be like I'm argumentative with you about anything, but this is finance and property, and the city council run those two things. And even if you're spending some money, you can call an emergency meeting about anything you want. But if those were indeed something that the police department needed, you could have called myself, Miss Crockett, Miss Davis, Mr. Anthony, Miss Ford, or Mr. St. Columbia. All of us on the city council, we'd have met to approve what you needed. But you look over us and you handle day-to-day operations, anything else without us. We're just the people that when you want to look good, you take a picture with us or whatever to make it like we're not working with you, but we're trying to work with you in a way that you should want to work with your city council when it comes to finances and property. You should want to work with us because that's what we're here for, to work with you. It's not a one-man show. We all on the same team together, as well as the treasurer and city clerk. I talk to the treasurer and the city clerk on a day-to-day basis. So we should have a working relationship with the mayor, with anything. And I wish you stop saying that you will going forward, and it never happens. Work with us as we trying to work with you. Point well taken is what you're gonna say.
No, I'm just gonna say that I think I have done better remembering to make sure y'all get emailed announcements and things that we do since I said that. And Helen's doing a good job of making sure, it's Sandy too, of making sure I remember to do that. I don't have a computer at the mayor's office. That's not a sufficient excuse. Some of it is just I should think about it, and I haven't thought about it. But we have done better. I have done better.
You have?
When it comes to, yeah, I have in the last month or 6 weeks since I made that statement. So, but I do appreciate your comments, Mr. Franklin. Any other questions?
I have.
Well, I want to make sure other people can ask questions, but I can't really see you, so just speak up.
I have a question. Mine is, do you anticipate federal funds to assist with first responder services during COVID?
That's a very good question, and we're kind of going to talk about that on the agenda here in a minute. But like I said, it's a great question. We have applied for it. I've spoken with Senator Bozeman about it, and he's been very helpful, let me say. The governor's office, the most important thing that happened was that the governor included Phillips County of course, this is the storm, not COVID, but we're also included in an emergency declaration by the governor for COVID. We're awaiting FEMA and other federal agencies to approve that. I've received some encouraging things, but the other issue, and we've been, as I think Derek and Sandy can tell you, we have been keeping those expenses separate to make it easier to keep track of. I want to thank Helen Halbert, who just yesterday got word, I think it was yesterday, that we received approval on a Department of Justice grant that could only be used for, it's Department of Justice, it could only be used for law enforcement. And that's going to help pay for overtime and a couple of other things. We haven't gotten any money. We haven't received any money, but we did get that approval. That's the best thing that's happened so far, frankly. And it took a lot of work. So congratulations. So thank Helen. She did a lot of work on it. Short answer is we haven't received any money yet. We have definitely asked for it and definitely worked hard to get it. We're basically just waiting on it. And then the rest of that, there's a bill in Congress. I think it passed out of the House. It's sitting in the Senate to give us, that would provide more money. It has not yet passed the Senate. And so we're going to talk about something that the municipally asked us to do about that here in a minute.
So that 38,000, Helen, that you just posted up, that's the DOJ grant, Department of Justice grant.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And with that grant that we got, can that also be used to pay off these ATVs?
No, it's very specific what you can. I mean, Helen's better equipped to. She did it.
Okay, so Ms. Halbert.
It's very specific about what can be spent on.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Ms. Halbert. With this grant, it's for the police department, correct?
Yes.
So these ATVs are in the police department, right?
Yes, but when I submitted the grant, you can't submit things that you've already purchased. And so what we did was we structured it to cover overtime costs that would be incurred for covering the curfew and shift shortages and that sort of thing. And then I also included some equipment and some cleaning supplies. It has to be COVID related specifically.
Okay.
Right.
So,
And we can't include those. We can't include those invoices and some of the other stuff that Ms. Ford was talking about.
so Ms. Halbert, so how the grant was how much you said?
38,500.
38. So when you all decide how that the treasurer, because the treasurer will work along with you all with this, can you send us a list of things or how y'all going to disperse this money?
Sure.
If you're going to
Send you a copy of the budget detail or the budget that I turned in for it that was approved with the
okay.
Mhm.
Because see, I was hoping that if the mayor had to talk to the city council, we could have got these ATVs and not put it on the back of the citizens, because that's who the backs is going to be on. Because some things could, if the grant was coming for $38,000, that would have really took that $19,000 that the mayor said we spent on these ATVs. It would have took that off. That was, to me, it's just one person speaking. To me, I understand we need to get behind these buildings and whatever to try to track down crime. But to me, trying to pay people would be more important than to have these ATVs right now, because I'm sure that everybody on the council knows that before they got these, they used the fire departments. The fire department has the same equipment that we got off a grant a couple of years ago. The same people that's serving on the city council now was serving when we got those through a grant. Sometimes we have to figure out what's important and what's not important. Those could have waited because we do have other issues that we need to take care of. And I'm not trying to be hard. We're going to have a shortfall next month. And are we prepared to handle that? I know the city treasurer said we hadn't lost any money yet. But we hit June, and July is our month that we got to get ready to start looking at how we're going to survive. And Mayor, I hope, do you have a plan set in place to see how can we survive the shortfall that comes next month? We need a 30-day plan to be ready for this. We have to be ready for this, because not only that, we're moving the police department. Have you all decided to use the money some of this grant to move the police department out toward the justice complex. Those are the things that we need to get ready for. I mean, how long it's going to take? You need a whole bunch of manpower to move those people out to the justice complex. We need a 30-day plan. And we're at day 2, so we're going to need a 29-day plan.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin. Do we have any other questions for Mr. Turner?
Can you answer that question, Mayor?
Yeah, we're working on a plan as far as projected losses in July. We've already had a plan that really, because of what you did last year when y'all voted on the sanitation increase, helps us deal with the loss as far as the prison goes. The lease hasn't been signed yet, so again, you can't. We would have to give that money back if for some reason we didn't sign that lease. So anyway, I hope that answered your question. But at the same time, there are issues or projected losses, especially because of the COVID issue going forward. And the next quarter is the one that worries us the most. So yes, we are talking about it to more directly answer your question. But I want to make sure other people who have questions get to ask those.
I'd like to respond to the concern about the loss from the jail. I mean, it's actually addressed in the budget. The projected loss from the money that we're losing to the county, that's already been projected. It's reflected in the budget. So all the costs, the revenue projections and the costs, everything regarding those issues are reflected in the budget. Now, anything, we know anything can happen, but those losses have been projected already, have been reflected in the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. My thing is this: I'd like to be able to share with my constituents and even the people out in the community as well what is going on, because you get a lot of phone calls, and I know the mayor says that we're gonna be okay, but we need something on paper. I know you said the budget reflects, but we need a 30-day plan so we can, even the departments need a plan to show that this what could happen. Nobody predicted that the COVID was going to come and do all what it has done to the whole world. But we need some type of plan in place. From the mayor to us, to give us a plan. Hey, this is what I think may happen. We don't have a plan. Only plan that the mayor has is to say, hey, after it's done, this is what happened and going forward. We need some kind of plan. The city council needs a plan from the mayor's office to say, hey, look, this is the direction that we're going to have to go in if nothing happens. The only thing we get is, what we got now. And as a leader, you should give the body a plan, or like when you did the State of the City last year. You had this big old platform to tell us which way we was going to go. Now is the time to give us, the council, something that we can say, hey, well, the mayor has gave us this plan. We're going to try to work with this plan to see if we can move our city into a better direction. And I know that
Okay, thank you, Mr. Franklin. Are there other questions for Mr. Turner?
I have a question. I don't know if this is Wanda. I don't know if this question is for Mr. Turner or who. My question is, I know that we had a discussion about the chief of police doing contract work for the county. But does that mean that he literally, that's his new office at the county? So how?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. The answer is no.
Why is he at the county all day, every day?
I'm sorry, I missed. I'd say that again.
Why is he at the county all day, every day?
You mean at the Justice Complex?
Yes.
Well, they've been talking a lot about, Mr. Valley was talking about the plan layout, and they've been discussing that quite a bit with the architects.
So that's why he's there from 7:30 in the morning?
He's not there all day,
Well,
but he is there a lot, and that would be one of the reasons. So, do we have anything about the treasurer's report?
Mayor, you are so rude. You say anything you want to, but then when somebody else talking, you try to cut them off. That is.
I just, Miss Crockett, I'm just trying to answer questions as best I can and keep us on the agenda.
We on the
Right now,
agenda.
right now, we're on the treasurer's report, and I want to make sure every council person has an opportunity to ask a question of the treasurer or about the treasurer's report.
Mr. Mayor, this is Chris Franklin.
Mr. Franklin, just a minute. Are there any other questions from any other members about the treasurer's report? And then I'll recognize Mr. Franklin. And then we have to move on.
You don't make that determination.
Are there any other questions of the treasurer at this time? Okay. If not, Mr. Franklin, go ahead.
Respond to Ms. Crockett's question, Mayor. You know as well as we know why the chief of police is there. Reason why?
Mr.
Hold on, wait. Let me
He's
finish.
not there.
Let me
Already answered that. It's not there every day, all day.
Let me finish.
That's
Let me
just
finish.
a false premise because he's not there all day, every day.
Mr. Mayor, you gave me the floor. Respect that. For you all who don't know, the mayor does know why the police chief is there. This is not to bash anybody or anything, but the police chief has a contract with the county. And the mayor has never brought that to our attention as well, that the chief has a contract as a consultant with the jail. Am I right, Kevin Smith?
Well, Mr. Franklin, that's already has been brought up before the council, I think a couple of months ago.
No.
It was.
Well,
it was brought up and discussed 2 or 3 months ago, and his contract is for the justice complex, I believe. Oh, no, I'm sorry, for the jail project. And if you want to talk about that, we can put it on the agenda and invite him to come talk about it. But that's not what's on the agenda tonight.
Well, I understand it.
But we have talked about it.
Excuse me.
We have discussed it, and he's not there every day, all day. But he does need to be there if we do end up there, because of the outline of the office complex. So, as Mr. Valley has mentioned before. Any other questions about the treasurer's report?
Well, I have a statement that I would like to make. You keep
Ms.
saying
Crockett.
that is not, we are on the treasury report, but that's part of the financing. And my thing is, he's being paid from the county. He can't be paid from 2 entities on the same hours. You can't work for 2 people at the same time.
But Ms. Crockett, I would disagree that that's what he's doing. So I don't agree with what you said, disagree with what you said, but I would disagree that that's what he's doing. And if that's something we want to talk about, then we need to put it on the agenda and bring it back up later.
Ms. Crockett, if you want to talk about it, we can make a motion.
I'm not going
Yeah.
to wait. This is it.
Excuse me?
I didn't hear. Somebody said something, but I didn't hear it. But, okay. The next item on the agenda is the federal audit engagement letter with Hoda Ward CPA to do a federal audit for federal grant funding that we've received. The Arkansas Legislative Audit requires the city to engage a separate private auditor to do private funds, or I'm sorry, federal funds of over $700,000 cumulative in a year. The auditors alerted us that they believe we possibly could require that audit for fiscal year 2019, which they're in the process of auditing. In order to do that, engage and then Hoda Ward, to refresh your memory, also does our water department. His water departments also have to have private audits. And Hoda Ward has experience with federal funds. So that's the next item on the agenda. Do we want to, anybody want to discuss that or have any questions about that?
I got a question.
Mr. Franklin.
hey, so why do we have to use them? We can choose whoever we want, right?
Well, they need to have experience with federal grant
Yeah.
funding audits, and we know the HUD Award does. The price that they came in at was within the range, and I'm not looking at it, but was within the range of what we were told to anticipate the cost of a private audit for federal funds would be.
Okay.
So that's
Okay,
why they were selected, and we've had experience with them before. They've done the water department before, and so forth.
Even with the water department as well, man, I think we could look for somebody else to do those. We know there are people in Helena-West with that kind of experience that can do the same thing they can do. Instead of going outside of our community, we start trying to you always say we shop locally. Well, let's see, can we find somebody locally who has that experience that can do that instead of going outside of our community.
We've already checked with CPAs in the area, and federal, Mr. Franklin, I'm trying to respond to your question.
Every time I'm trying to finish talking.
Federal audits are a specialty, and they're not easy to do.
Okay.
The agreement by this auditor was that it would not exceed $7,000. In order for us to comply with state audit, we have to perform a private audit of our federal funds. Now, in the past, we haven't had a lot of federal funds because we were on an offset program with the federal government, and they literally swept grant money that we received. So it might or might not be something that y'all dealt with before in recent years anyway. But we hope, especially we're talking about reimbursement on COVID expenses. We hope that this is something we do a lot more often. But we did check and have checked with other local. It's not something that is done by you need a CPA, first of all, not just an accountant. And secondly, you need one that has experience with federal budget and audits per the state legislative audit requirements. So do we have any other questions about this issue of engagement letters for the federal audit?
Mayor Andre Valley,
Mr. Valley.
Add to what the mayor is saying. The whole award has a wide variety of expense. I've represented other water utilities, and many people have tried to find auditors for water and for federal funds. And in Eastern Arkansas, he is the primary person, and most people, even CPA with experience, many of them will contract back to him. It seems like I'm breaking up.
No, we can hear you.
Okay. Many times people will co-contract with him to do this, to do things for him when they're the facts, he still is doing it behind the scenes. So I think Mr. Turner has experience with Mr. Holder Ward as well, as it relates when he did private work as well. But I don't know that for certain. But my point is, I think that he probably would do an excellent job. I think he does almost in Eastern Arkansas, and he does many of the federal audits that the mayor is speaking of. And this isn't something that you can simply go out. This isn't something you can just go out and find somebody to do. It's just specialized as a federal audit.
Thank you, Mr. Valley. Any questions? Any other questions or comments about the federal audit issue? Is there a motion to engage HUD Award CPA to do a private audit on our federal funds for fiscal 2019?
I so moved, Joe St. Columbia.
Mr. St. Columbia makes a motion. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Is that Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Davis seconds the motion. Any other discussion? If not, call the roll.
Ford, Epley,
Yes.
Franklin,
Yes.
Crockett,
Yes.
St. Columbia,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Ford,
Yes.
six
Okay,
yes.
motion passes. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda, and that's all we needed on that, right?
Mhm.
Just making sure.
Yes.
Before we move. Okay. There is a resolution that was in your packet that the Arkansas Municipal League asked us to endorse. This is the one that I was talking to Ms. Ford, and partly in answer to your question. Cities are essential. Again, there's a package in Congress to provide more funding for cities. It's passed the House of Representatives, the U.S. House of Representatives. It's in front of the U.S. Senate. It's been stalled there. So the Municipal League, and I think all the municipal leagues in the country are trying, the National League of Cities and many other organizations are basically asking all cities to endorse this, to let our congressional delegations know that we support this being approved by Congress, so that we can get much needed federal aid to the cities. Any questions about that? Is there a motion to adopt the resolution to endorse the cities are essential?
So move for endorsement. What would be the number? I mean, well, there's no number.
Second.
Said 10.
Ms. Ramsey, what's the resolution number?
10.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Sorry, I didn't hear it. Okay. Ms. Ford moves adoption, and was that Ms. Davis who seconded?
Yes.
Any other discussion on that? If not, call the roll.
Etherly, Ford,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Crockett,
Yes.
Franklin,
Yes.
St. Columbia,
Yes.
Etherly.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll get that sent on. The next item on the agenda is overtime for the fire department. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure who's on the agenda to discuss this. Anybody want to? I know Mr. Etherly and also Mr. Turner, several people have been working on it. So I'll just open that up, I guess.
You're on the approval of overtime?
Yeah, I wasn't sure who's actually supposed to be
The only thing I can add for
recognized
is,
on that.
I'm sorry, Mr. Etherly.
Well, no, I was just going to say, I had actually asked to be on the agenda to present an ordinance on that, which it's not on there, but that's fine because I'm not yet finished. And I wanted the city attorney to review it and take a look at it before I get done. So I'm not yet finished, and I want to be able to get it to everybody on the council also. So I've requested, and I emailed everybody also, I requested some copies of timesheets for the month of April. I'm making that a part of my my presentation, and there's some information that I want to take a look in that before I actually finish the ordinance also. So I'm kind of I haven't gotten the documentation yet, so I'm kind of in midstream right now. So I'm not ready actually to go forward on my presentation.
Will you share that? Get it.
I'm sorry. What was that?
Share that once you get the one for April.
Yeah, and what I did in that email, and I made it a point to say that I didn't know who wanted a copy and who didn't, and I didn't want Ms. Ramsey or whoever had to copy it to just be making random copies. So what I did is ask that anyone who wanted a copy, let her know so that she wouldn't just, but I'll give you a copy, and so I would take it that you're asking for a copy also. So
Right.
I would ask that she give you one, and what I'll do is when I get here's what might happen, to be honest. If I take a look at those timesheets, there may not be a need for an ordinance. But some of this is going to come out in the wash, and I want to see what I want to view what I'm, take a look at what's out here, try to interpret what it means, and if there's a way to deal with it without an ordinance, do it that way. But if an ordinance is necessary, then move forward on the ordinance. So I'm trying to get a full understanding of what's actually happening. But certainly, if we get to a point where I'm presenting the ordinance, I'll make sure everybody gets a copy of it before the meeting. And I want to talk to Mr. Valley about it also before it gets submitted.
Mr. Edley, thank you, Mr. Edley, and thank you for your leadership on that. I think I've said this before, but I'll say it again. I certainly welcome it. It's something that we all need to work on, and I welcome the council's involvement and your leadership particularly. So thank you very much for that. Any questions of Mr. Etherly or other comments? Okay, so I guess we'll wait on that information, Mr. Etherly, and proceed accordingly. So, all right, if no other questions, we'll move on to the last item.
They still have to appropriate. They still have to appropriate the funds so that they can pay their overtime. They lack. They need $8,104.52 so that they can be paid the overtime. There's not enough in appropriations for them to be paid.
Is that in addition to what we did 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, this is the next one. This is the one after that, and then the pay period ends tomorrow. And so you're gonna have. I can let you, and I'll send you an email Thursday because the pay period ends tomorrow. And I'll send an email out as soon as I get it, and I should get the information on Thursday. And by Thursday, I mean that's for the pay period that ends tomorrow. And I'll try to get you your other information by tomorrow at that time as well for the April time sheet. But right now they need $8,000 to be paid the overtime for the last pay period.
For the what?
The last pay period. I mean the last paycheck.
We're asking for $8,000 plus whatever they incur this pay period.
Yes, but I don't know what the plus is.
I got this right here. The fire chief had said that he needs $50,000 for the rest of the year. And Mayor, I'm pretty sure he has talked to you about that as well. That's what you're waiting on somebody to bring up. But he has talked to the mayor about an additional $50,000. Am I correct, Mayor? Haven't he spoke to you about the additional $50,000 that he would need for the rest of the year?
No,
he
that's
would
not.
He would cut
No, that's
overtime.
No, that's not correct about the 50,000. At least he didn't mention 50,000. It is correct that he said that he had a plan that he would like to present to y'all and to everybody at some point, and I certainly told him I welcome that. I haven't seen the plan yet, but he did tell me that he had a plan that he wanted to present, and as fire chief, I felt like he certainly had the right to do that. He didn't mention a dollar amount. And then I think I mentioned to him the conversations we've been having at council meetings. And then I know I was telling Mr. Etherly wanted to bring it up tonight on what he's been working on. So that's where that is. I asked him to get with Don and others to discuss it also. So I don't know if he's done that or not.
You mean Mr. Etherly, right?
No, the fire chief.
No, you mean Mr. Etherly should get with Don. Don who? Mr. Etherly, right?
I didn't follow what you said. The fire chief, what I said was, or what I meant to say, is that I encouraged the fire chief to get with Mr. Etherly. I may have misspoke, okay. And to and other members of the council, Mr. Turner, and anybody else to because I know Mr. Turner and Mr. Etherly especially have been working hard on it. And he said he would. So that's the last conversation I had with him about it.
So Mayor, can I answer this question? The fire chief said he needed $50,000. And I don't know if he spoke to any other councilman, but he said he needed $50,000 that would take him to the end of the year. What's your take on $50,000 more on top of what we're going to approve in what they already got. So should we?
Well, again, he didn't mention
Can I finish?
that. He didn't mention that figure to me. So I'd have to look at it and visit with Mr. Turner and look at the entire budget before I can answer that.
I can add something to that. I did the calculation. You know, the way they do their shifts, they work 24-hour shifts and they work a 28-day shift. And so I went and did the calculation for the remaining pay periods, which was 16 at the time. And it came out to be about 50, somewhere in the neighborhood of $50,000, $48,000 or something like that, just for the regular shift, because they work 24-hour shifts, a 28-day period, but most of the months have 30 to 31 days. And so they get, in a normal shift, in a normal 28-day shift, they get 4 hours of overtime anyway. So throughout the year, they have periods when they can get 28 hours. They have killer days to cover those. But that's going on the way that the pay periods are structured. I did a calculation. I knew every fireman's overtime rate, and I used that to come up with a number. Let me see. I don't have that number because I changed it since then. At that time, it was 16 pay periods. Now it's 14 pay periods. And right now, it seems like they would need about $41,000. And that's just to cover just the regular shifts, just no call outs or anything like that. And some of that can be used for call outs because, like I said, some of those shifts, I didn't take the killer days out. And so I did leave some 24-hour overtime shifts in there, which should be enough for that. But just doing my calculation, I came up with I did come up with about $50,000 initially, but that was a couple of pay periods ago.
Hey, Mr. Turner.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Turner, Ms. Haber, and the mayor, this is for y'all. See, they applied for the money for the police department. They didn't have anything like that for the fire department because they're first responders as well. And due to the disaster and the COVID, the fire department didn't qualify for any overtime funds or money like that to use for overtime, but like the police department did. Have y'all tried to see if there's anything that we can get to help offset that? Because
if you're talking about the Department of Justice grant, that was law enforcement only. If you're talking about FEMA and some of the other pots of money, yes. And that's accurate. They would be eligible.
I mean, I'm just anything to lighten up the load on us. They need some money, and maybe we can get you all to, whether from the mayor's office, communicate with us about what's out there, so we'll know what we can do for the department before I jump out and say, oh yeah, $50,000 more dollars. If there's some money to help offset the cost, I would hope from the mayor's office to see what's available for the fire department to get, so we can help them use whatever funds we can get to help them use to help cover.
I will
help cover. Are you gonna let me finish?
Wait, Mr. Franklin, we have other people too on this call.
Well, but hey, right now
you've made a point, and I've answered your question. They are eligible for FEMA and other funds, and if that's funded, then I hope that that's approved. However, in the meantime, I'm proceeding like it won't be funded, because even if it's approved, I've been told that you can wait as long as a year for reimbursement funds from FEMA. So I don't think it's a good idea to plan ahead as if we will get funding, even if they approve it, because of the time delay. The Department of Justice grant was a different story. And also, if Congress passes this bill that y'all just endorsed, that could change. But in the meantime, and I have talked to Senator personally about this, the reimbursement timeframe is is infamously bad. And we have cash flow issues because cities have to spend money as they get it. And so we don't have the luxury of waiting a year and a half to get reimbursed. And that's if we're approved. The Department of Justice's grant was more immediate. We hope some of the other funds will be too, but I don't want to plan as if they are, because I think that gets us in trouble. Okay. Now, I think we were talking about overtime, Mr. Turner, and we needed appropriations for, would you say $8,500? Is that what it was?
Yeah, $8,104.52. I think Mr. Etherly had a question.
Yeah, but you said they schedule. Am I understanding this right? That they schedule overtime? Why do they? Does anybody know why they schedule overtime?
The way, because of the way the shifts are built, they work 24-hour shifts, and it's a 28-day pay period for 5. And just going through their shifts, they work about 10 shifts a month in that 28-day cycle. If you count the 10 cycles, I mean the 10 pay periods, you will typically have about 4 hours of overtime, just because of the way the shifts are made and because they work 24-hour shifts. It's like every shift they will have 4 hours of overtime. I mean, not every shift.
That's a choice. But that's a that's a choice.
No, that's just that's how it's scheduled. The schedule, the way it's scheduled.
The schedule is a choice.
But perhaps it needs to be rescheduled. Is that what you're saying?
Huh? I'm asking. Okay, so here's my issue, right? Let me make sure I'm clear on what I'm saying.
Okay.
He's saying that they have a 28-day schedule and they schedule 24-hour shift. And the way that they do it, you have 4 hours of overtime automatically. I'm saying, unless you are required to schedule in that manner, why not schedule differently so you avoid overtime? Why would you?
I'm sorry.
Why would you create a schedule that mandates overtime?
That's the schedule that the city had. The city has decided to schedule the firemen in 24 hours.
I didn't decide to schedule that way.
Well, you have to take.
Has it always been this way? Are you saying it's always been like this?
I don't know how long it's been a 24-day schedule.
Most of them have it.
She said
It's been quite a while.
Say what?
It's been like that quite a while.
Yeah.
For 30 years.
I mean, a lot of places across the country. I mean, I'm pretty sure most fire departments across the country use a 24-hour shift. They go on, they work 1 shift on, 2 shifts off. 1 day on, 2 days off. That's how they work. 24 hours on, 2 days off, then they come in and work another 24-hour shift. And the way it plays out, they're gonna have 4 hours of overtime every pay period. So it's built in to their 24-hour shift.
I understand what you're saying, Mr. Turner. Well, I'm not asking you to answer for the fire department. I want to make that clear. I am not asking you to answer for the fire department. Okay. I'm just asking if the facts are correct, that they are scheduling overtime. Because if they are scheduling overtime, in my mind, that makes no sense. We don't have money to burn. We don't have money to automatically pay people for overtime just because they want to schedule so that they get overtime. It makes no sense.
Don, what I'm saying is the way the scheduling goes, and these are federal guidelines, anything over 212 hours, they get overtime. Anything over 212 hours in a 28-day period, you get overtime. And so every period they're gonna work 216 hours, at least 216 hours. Sometimes it's 28 hours worth of overtime. But they have this thing called the Kelly Day. And so what we do, we give them a Kelly Day. That means we give them the day off and we pay them regular time. And so they still have that, but they still have 4 hours of overtime.
Okay, do you have that in writing?
I don't have it in writing, but that's how we pay it. And I know that's what the Kelly Days are, and that I can get you the information.
What I'm saying, and what I'm asking, have they presented that to you in writing?
No, Don, that's how fire departments do it. That's how we've been doing it, as far as I know. That's
No,
what fire
no, no,
departments.
I'm not talking about how we've been doing it.
You need some federal guidelines. You need some federal labor laws. Maybe Andre can get you some federal labor laws. But if they
But I
work,
mean,
But-
listen to what I'm saying.
I think y'all are
People
missing each other.
I'm hearing that people are acting on belief and not documentation. If this exists, if everything that we're saying exists, it should be in writing somewhere. Andre doesn't cut payroll.
there are federal labor laws that say if they work over 212 hours, you have to pay them overtime. I mean, their overtime limit is 212. Anything over 212, they get overtime.
The Kelly days, how often does that occur?
That's 5 times a year.
Well, one thing I want to say about the Kelly Day, Andre Vallis, city attorney. The Kelly Day is something that we do locally and departments do all over the nation. It is not based on the law. It started from the city of Chicago Fire Department. Mr. League doesn't recognize Kelly Day, but it's something that the city of Helena has been doing for 30 or 40 years, and we consolidated, they kept as part of the pay structure. A Kelly Day is not mandatory for us to pay, but it's something traditionally that we have done, and it gives them 5 days annually. And Mr. Turner and I discussed that, Mr. Martin and I have discussed that as well, but it's calculated as part of their compensation. What Mr. Turner is getting at about the 24 hours, Mr. Ethley, I'm not the accountant, but they schedule 24 on, 48 off, and the 212 hours over 28-day period. In it is inherently going to be some overtime, is what I think that the two of y'all are discussing. It is the way the scheduling has been done. It's not saying that it has to be done that way permanently, but that's the way it's been done. It's been done that way for 30 or 40 years. And I think that's what the two of y'all are missing in the conversation. But your action is it mandatory to do it? I don't think it's mandatory that you just schedule it in that way, but it's something that traditionally has been occurring. And Mr. Turner speaking to about 30 or 40 years of history that we have and doing it that way. You're speaking specifically is it mandatory that we do it that way?
Yeah, what I'm trying to get him to do is, what I'm trying to get Mr. Turner to do is not speak for the fire department. I'm trying to invite him to.
I'm not speaking for the fire department. I'm explaining why they have that. When I explain to you why the overtime is built into the way it is, that's because they work the 24-hour day schedule. That's all I'm telling you from an accounting point of view.
The math. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. The math. Yeah.
I understand the math.
Okay.
I don't understand the reason why it's being set up that way.
Okay.
And my question is what Mr. Valley is saying. Unless they can show me on paper that they are required to schedule that way, then it's nonsense that we pay this overtime on a regular period. It's nonsense. So
I mean, you can't. They have there. I'm sure there are some now here and there, but you can schedule 8-hour shifts. I think it's some. I mean, I think some do, but the vast majority of them schedule 24-hour shifts. But I'm sure there are some that schedule 8-hour shifts.
You know, people who have a lot of money drive Rolls Royce.
Yeah.
We don't.
I think that part of the issue inherently is the departments have done this due to manpower. But I will go back and check because historically, Mr. League has intervened and sent emails on it. I go back and check. It's been about 10 years ago we had this long conversation about it with Mr. League. But I'll check my historical documents to see exactly what we were doing. Because we tried to resolve this and Mayor Valley ended up getting it under control at some point. But it still was some overtime. I'm not saying that was no overtime. It still was some overtime. This has been the issue that continued to come up. But I would check on the 24-hour period to see whether it's mandatory, Mr. Ethley. I think Mr. Turner is speaking strictly numbers. He doesn't speak for the fire department. He's speaking about history, and I can't speak for Mr. Turner. But just for clarity of conversation, that's where I am.
Yeah, and that's what I meant. I mean, mathematically, you're going to have some overtime.
And do we need to get the chief here maybe on our next meeting to give his point of view or his reasons why?
I would make a suggestion. And that is why I requested one pay cycle. I would suggest that we get the information first, because if you're not armed with the information, you're generally ill-equipped to ask questions. It's kind of like if it's useless for me to go to court and and cross-examine a person when I don't first have information or documentation in my hand. And that's why I wanted the 28-day cycle. Let me see exactly what they're doing on paper. And I think everybody should take a look at that so that because when the chiefs come, understand they have an informational advantage on you. They do it every day. They're familiar with what they're doing. They can tell you whatever they want to tell you. They can blow whatever smoke they want to blow up your end. If you have the documentation in your hand, you can ask questions about what you're looking at and why is this way and that way. And so personally, that's why I requested that documentation, 28-day pace. I want to see what's happening because it doesn't make sense to me. And I've been asking these questions around and around and around for the longest, and I don't understand it. I want to see it on paper. And what I'm hearing, the longer we talk about this, the more my mouth opens on this, because it seems like we're doing something that we don't have to do. And it completely explains why overtime is so high every year. If I'm wrong, let's have the documentation. So Ms. Davis, I would like to have the chief here, but I first want to get the documentation first so that I can educate myself as much as possible before I try to have a back and forth with somebody who knows more about what they're doing than I know at this point.
That sounds
Mayor
good.
Joe St. Columbia. I agree with Mr. Etherly. I think we need to get that information first and then go forward from there. And I think it can be worked out where we won't have to pay that overtime. Thank you.
Okay, and let me say, Mr. Turner has been working hard on this, and part of it, I would call it kind of a working group, trying to get that information, and has really rolled up his sleeves, and I want to thank him publicly. I've seen him do it the last couple of months, especially, and it's not an easy thing to attack or to deal with, and Mr. Etherly again for his leadership as well. So as we try to get this information, let's hope we can get it quickly, and then ultimately move on with it. So, but we still do have the issue for us of the overtime, $8,100. Does anyone want to address that?
How much you say?
I think. Go ahead.
$8,104.52.
So, I guess to be specific, there needs to be a motion to approve an appropriate or to a resolution a motion for a resolution to add at least $8,150 to the appropriations for overtime for the fire department in order to pay the overtime that has been accrued thus far. Did I say that correct, Mr. Turner?
So move.
Ms. Davis makes the motion to adopt the resolution as stated. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Adley seconds the motion. Any other discussion on the motion? If not, call the roll.
Crockett. St. Columbia.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Franklin. Etherly.
Yes.
Ford. Crockett.
Yes.
Franklin.
I think he may be off.
Ford.
Said yes.
Thank you.
Okay. The resolution passes. Thank you very much. Okay, so the last item on the agenda is the flood wall issue. This is one that we got out to.
Hey,
I'm sorry.
we have another appropriation that we need for overtime.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I didn't see that. Go ahead, Mr. Turner, or whoever else was talking there.
This is Ms. Crockett, and we need to appropriate money for the overtime that was that has already taken place for the code. And I think this is like going into the second pay period that the young man has not been paid. And we also need to discuss how you're still paying overtime out of street and sanitation for somebody that's in code.
Okay, which one do you want to do first?
The overtime for the gentleman that has worked the overtime who has not been paid.
Okay, so how much is that?
Okay, he currently has, okay, there was never any overtime approved for the code enforcement department, appropriated, I mean. And so he has actually but we've paid him 3 checks so far. So in total, what I'm asking for is the total appropriation that he's been paid, including this one. This one is $181. But in total, his was $312.95. And I'm also asking to appropriate $20.19 for the young lady that has left, because she had $20 like back in January. So the total I'm asking for is $333.14.
Okay.
Second.
Ms. Crockett moves that we approve a resolution to appropriate $333.14 to pay overtime accrued in the code department. And I think was that Ms. Davis who seconded?
Yes.
Any other discussion? If not, call the roll.
St. Columbia,
Yes.
Crockett,
Yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Etherly,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Franklin,
Yeah.
Okay. Motion passes. Okay, are those the only motions, Mr. Turner?
Yes, sir.
Overtime. Okay. So back on Ms. Crockett wanted to discuss overtime for the other code officer and animal control that comes out of street and sanitation. As I stated before, he is paid overtime mostly on weekends. He hasn't accrued much overtime. Mostly it's after hours and on weekends when he gets animal control calls after hours. I don't know what the total is, but I don't believe it's been very much. Most of the time we have to remind him to do it. However, I'm not sure, Mr. Turner, but I don't know if that position is even still in street and sanitation, but it's much cheaper than filling that position and training somebody again. The legislative audit assures me that is provided that it is appropriated for the city, and he's doing animal control. There isn't anything illegal or anything else about it. In my opinion, animal control is part of code enforcement in the sense, so it's related. We spent a lot of money getting him licensed and trained on the different apparatuses that you have to have a state license for to use. It hasn't been, overwhelming amount of money. I don't know what the total has been, but it hasn't been very much. So that's what I would say about that.
Wanda, this is Wanda. Mayor, I think we had a lengthy discussion about this last meeting. And I recall right, the city attorney advised that it was not legal to be paying him overtime out of the street because he is not employed by the street department. He's employed by code. So basically, if you're paying him overtime out of one thing, his job title is code enforcer. It does not have anything to do with dog catcher or any of that stuff. So how you can't justify to pay him out of street.
Mr. Ballard, did you say that was illegal?
Yes. How do you pay somebody? Because it wouldn't be overtime if he's
I'm
working.
sorry.
now this is my opinion. If he's doing a whole separate job, that's not overtime. That's a whole different job. He should be getting paid straight rates if that's the case. He's not, you can't do overtime. That's two different jobs. That's not the same job.
Last city council meeting, we discussed the issue, and what I said was the cleanest way to do it was for it all to be added to the code enforcement. The one thing about it is we're one city, and he can't have two separate jobs in one city. He's been designated as primary pay as code enforcement. We should have clarity with it all being placed in code enforcement. I said it was, I didn't say it was illegal. I said it would be frowned upon for him to be paid from that. It's clarity for the city council, clarity for the mayor, clarity for the officers that all of it comes from one line item. And I encourage you all to put all of it in one line item under the code enforcement. One of the issues that concerned me is when he's going back in dual capacities. We've always tried to limit that is he code enforcement? Is he a dog catcher? We had the issues with the water department and the fire department as relates to meter readers. And I think that the cleanest in the way and for clarity that the money that's overtime should be appropriated as code enforcement. He should be continuously paid from the code enforcement line item versus sanitation line item, so that it'll be clear. And it's one of those things that, for me as city attorney, for clarity for city council, when we're moving money from one line item, paying out this line item, it appears that you're trying to do something that isn't underhanded, but sometimes people like you're hiding money from us. And that's why I'm saying clarity, so to be clear. And I'm not expressing that that's the mayor's intent. I'm not saying that in any way. Previous mayors have done that. It is something that is not illegal, but for clarity and for everybody to have understanding as to where you are and what the line is spending, it should be all paid from the same line item, so everyone will understand where the money is coming from. The mayor has some latitude that relates to it. But I've always advised previous mayors from John Weaver through James Valley through Jay Hollowell and now Mayor Kevin Smith that I prefer clarity as relates to it. The budget is a general document as it relates to line items. If you have money appropriated somewhere else, mayors have done this in the past. That they've paid from, he's doing work for sanitation, so I'm going to pay him from there. And it's one of those things that auditors don't necessarily write you up for. But for clarity's sake, I think the cleanest way to do it is for you all to make sure it comes out of one line item. I did not mean to give you the impression that it was illegal. I did not say it was illegal. What I was saying that it needs to be clear as to where the money is coming from.
And I just like to make one point. We do have another employee that works in the street foreman. He does get paid when he does the lifeguard or whatever he does at the swimming pool. Now he gets paid overtime out of parks. We don't even have a parks department, but his overtime goes into the parks department. And his job, he gets his regular pay in the street department.
Okay. So
yes.
this is just being brought to our attention. So all of this needs to be cleaned up. Some kind of way it needs to be cleaned up. Like you said, we don't have a parks anymore. So if something has to happen, because.
But I'm sorry, Ms. Crockett.
I said, this is just my opinion.
Okay.
It just looks bad for the city to have, like Mr. Valley said, it might not be intentional, but it looks like you're trying to hide something. And like, how can you have to be paid from two different line items if you have one job? And I would like to have a report of the things that's been done for overtime for the code from both gentlemen that we're paying overtime to. What kind of calls do they go to? Where do they, because I have not seen why. I got 16 dogs over here in my neighborhood and ain't nobody picked them up. So I would like to know, what does he like? Can it clarify what calls are you getting? Where are you going for this overtime? Because I got a list of the overtime from January to now in every pay period. The code, one code officer has overtime, anywhere from 10 to 15 hours. So I'm asking for clarity. If I misunderstood to say that it was illegal, please forgive me, but it seems like it's illegal to me.
if I may, let me just say that the auditors don't cite you for it. I do think it's not a bad idea from a clarity point of view, and I think Mr. Valley's right about that. It's certainly nothing hidden from the public. That's why we do get audited. But also, we're saving the public money by doing it that way. It might be cleaner, and for clarity's sake, to move some of that money into code for animal control overtime. It would be cleaner. So from that perspective, I certainly wouldn't object as long as we had a realistic figure. As far as why there are dogs, most of the animals, well, let me back up. The overtime justifications and the animal control documentation is there. I just about every time, if it's on a weekend, or which would be overtime or after hours, I've approved it personally because we don't have a place to put them. It's always an issue. It's always an issue. So if we have a place to put them, if somebody's willing to take them, then that's pretty much what makes the decision about whether or not he goes out. And of course, he's got to be called and all the usual things. If there's a dangerous situation, that would be different. But the documentation is there. We'll try to get you the documentation. If the treasurer can help me figure out a way to improve the clarity by moving some of that into the code department. But I do think he is the licensed, trained person for the city. He does a good job. And he doesn't cost much for it. He doesn't spend much overtime on it. He does document it. But if for clarity purposes, it would be better, and the advice of the council is to do that. And then Mr. Turner helped me figure out how we can do that, and we'll do it.
I mean, this is the only thing I'll say about it. If for clarity's sake, I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned more about accounting. If it's accounting, the job function should be in the category or whatever that the job is being done. If it's street work, it should be in street. If it's swimming pool related, it should be in Parks and Recreation. Now, so if you kind of need to understand this, so I'm going to do things that are done appropriately for accounting purposes, and I can be as clear as I can in an accounting concept. But if it doesn't fit with the proper accounting, then I'm not going to do it. Now, if it does, if the accounting doesn't matter, then that's okay. But I'm going to check and make sure that accounting wise, that it's appropriate to do it that way. But the way I'm doing it now, it's appropriate to do it that way. Because street function, it should be in the street department expense. And if you're doing a swimming pool function, it should be in Parks and Recreation. Now, I'll look into it any other way. I'm not trying to be, funny about it, but I'm going to check and make sure that accounting wise, if it's appropriate.
But okay, my question is, I understand what you're saying. If he's doing the work if they're doing the work for parks, or the swimming pool, if he's doing, but I kind of remember that, like Mr. Valley said, you can't hold two positions for the city. So basically, you're paying overtime to someone that is not a dog catcher. He has. Don't get me wrong. I understand that he has all the things that he needs to be a dog catcher, but his job description does not include dog catching. So how do you pay overtime for something that it's not a job? Hello, Mayor.
Well, my answer would be because he's doing that work, and I haven't documented this part, but I've been told that in some places, dog and animal control is part of code enforcement. Maybe I
Is
think
that
for
part of his job description?
I said in some places,
No,
animal control is part of code enforcement. So I do think it's related to code enforcement. But if for clarity purposes, we want to expand the job description or do whatever the appropriate accounting thing is, then we should certainly do that. But it's not a violation of audit standards. It's not a violation of law. It's not something that's been kept secret. or anything like that. It's audited. So I do want to reassure,
But
council and the public of that.
I really believe you know, I understand you're trying to justify what you're doing, but now, Mr. Valley, I know I just heard you say that about the water department when we had the people who were working for the water department, for the fire department, and wanted to be meter readers. They couldn't hold 2 jobs under the city. So how is it possible that he's holding 2 jobs under the city? They were actually getting paid for 1 job and another job. He's getting overtime for a job that he's not, it's not a job. That's not a part. I understand if other cities do it and they put people at dog catchers in with the code enforcement. That's not the description of the job of our code enforcement. So I understand that y'all saying that it's not, the auditors don't frown on it and all of that. It's not all the time about the auditors, because a lot of times the auditors frown on things that really don't matter. It's all about who presents it to them. But I just don't see how we had to stop those people from doing it, but now we can allow somebody to actually get overtime for doing a whole separate job that they're not hired to do.
Ms. Crockett, Andre Valley again. That's why I said, for clarity's sake, I prefer it all to be under one person. The mayor, you've heard from the mayor as well as Mr. Turner as relates to their thoughts on it. I would prefer to have clarity on it, so to be everyone will understand where you are. From an accounting standpoint, I think that it probably can, but I would defer to Mr. Turner on that and his research. But simply stated, the thing that for me, and as well as for the public, is that there be clarity that it all comes to. Because on one hand, I'm not casting aspersions on any person, but the practical issue is if you don't know that if you're paying out of 2 separate line items, when is overtime costing over? Where is the amounts and those things? And that's why I'm saying just make it all clear, and so we won't even have to deal with the issue. And it's one of those things that the mayor, as well as Mr. Turner, can even avoid having the conversation, because it'll all be laid out and everybody have it, and we won't have to spend 30 minutes talking about this again. And that's what I prefer, just to be clear and to go forward. Again, I'm not casting aspersions on anyone. I don't think anyone's doing anything illegal. I don't think anyone is trying to intentionally deceive or in any manner trying to hide anything from you. But it's one of those things for me. One of the things that the mayors have, it looks like I'm freezing. One of the things that the mayors typically have an issue with city council. City council want to know everything in a clear fashion. And every mayor that I've dealt with has always had these discussions with city councils. And so I just prefer just to be clear and we can move forward.
Okay, well, we'll move forward with that understanding. And just to be clear, one reason we had a good year financially last year is because I asked everybody I told everybody that they will have to do more with less in order to get through that year. And you all know some of that story. We didn't have Christmas bonuses. We had to combine CDL drivers. We did a lot of things. Generally speaking, everybody had to do more with less. But that's the only reason we had such a good, well, that's one of the main reasons, not the only reason we had such a good financial year. But for clarity's sake, moving forward, we'll try to look at all those cases where, and of course I wasn't here when the meter reading issue happened, so that one's new to me, but I'll try to find out more about it and see what we need to do to clarify. So any other questions or comments, Ms. Crockett or anybody else? If not, okay, we'll move forward to the last item on the agenda. The flood wall, consolidated grain and barge. This is an example that I sent out to the council And I hope that I continue to do better at keeping y'all in the loop on those matters. I won't repeat what's in the letter, and we'll probably ask you, Mr. Valley, here in a minute to pick up where I drop off. But for anybody on the call that maybe didn't receive copies of that, essentially, I want to say about a month ago now, Consolidated Grain and Barge sent a letter, which was attached to what I sent out, saying that their expenses would be over $1 million and probably much more for them to accommodate the Corps of Engineers project to replace the seawall that their company, according to the engineers of the Corps, has largely been responsible for destroying because of the grain bins located on top of the footings for the seawall. This is a federal government project. U.S. Corps, I guess I would add maybe, many of you are aware of several flood wall breaches and flooding issues all along the Mississippi River and tributary system. So the Corps of Engineers, before I became mayor, sent out crews to examine the weakest places. They determined that our seawall was one of those places. They implemented on their own initiative funding to further inspect, and replace the seawall in downtown Helena. In that process, the Consolidated Grain and Barge company would not give their approval to the project, which has cost it, I was told the other day, possibly an additional $8 million to try and avoid going through it and go around it. And a lot of accommodations have been made in order to get the project accomplished in a timely manner because, of course, flooding can happen at any time. Court proceedings to declare an eminent domain can take years. So the best way to deal with that would have been for Consolidated Grain to allow for them to go across their property. That letter was a response to a meeting that was held, I think, in February by the Corps of Engineers. And so I called the principal for our local Consolidated Grain and Barge, and he, I believe, lives in Memphis. And I told him about 2 weeks ago now, that I was disappointed in the letter, by no uncertain terms, that he would be putting our public in danger. The destruction to Arkansas Street alone was probably $1 million. And all the other things that you probably read in that letter, and asked them to, gave them 2 weeks basically to agree to something better. They let the 2 weeks come and go. I talked to the colonel of the Corps of Engineers in Memphis about the project and where it is, and was convinced, as well as the local attorney who works on it, Mr. Roscoff, and nothing had changed. And so that's when I notified them of my intention to enforce the law by putting signs up on Arkansas Street and around their company to prevent trucks of 1 ton of over to use those streets to access their facility, and asked Mr. Valley to investigate other options, including the possibility of condemnation. At this point, they have not officially responded. And Mr. Valley, that's where I'm going to hand this off to you, I guess, for next steps. Now, I have ordered those signs. We're waiting them to arrive. When they do arrive, the state statute requires you to have signage up before you can implement that law, which is just common sense. You can't tell somebody they're breaking the law if you don't tell them, you don't have signs up. You wouldn't give somebody a speeding ticket if you didn't have speeding sign. So, it's a common sense law, and it's not signed but we've ordered those signs. They're not in yet, but as soon as they are, I intend to put them up and enforce that, which is already in our code books. The other issues, condemnation and so forth, I would defer to Mr. Valley. Mr. Valley. I think you're on mute.
He's got his mic off.
Yeah, it's not that I have my mic off. I'm having sketchy internet as well. My computer center has sketchy internet. I was wondering, can you hear me? The mayor sent me the email relating to this matter. I've been trying to obtain the engineering report from the Corps of Engineers to show exactly what the mayor is saying and what are the remedial actions we have. This has a bunch of moving parts. Attorney Charles Roscoff represents the Helena Improvement District. The mayor informed me there's an attorney from the Jackson, the Mississippi area who represents Consolidated Grain. And when I had the conversation with the mayor about it, I asked him prior to putting the signs up that give us a little while, because the practical issue is once we put the signs up, they won't have anywhere to go. And what they would do is immediately sue us for governmental taking. And we were trying to work through those things. Of course, all this was dropped in my lap. I think it was whatever day the mayor sent the email, I received it at the same time. The mayor talked to me, then he sent the email almost immediately after talking to me about it. But it's my understanding the mayor's been in conversations about this for approximately 90 days or so. But as it relates to actions, one of the actions you have potential condemnation. This is something that I have to take a studied approach to, because while there is a issue of danger to the public and it is vitally important, the other issue is the finances of the city. But this is going to be a fight. And I have to tell you all that up front. This is not going to be something that they're going to go away easy. Part of the conversation when I talked to the mayor that I advised him is, I almost assure you they're going to sue us for some constitutional issue, and we need to keep the municipal league apprised, because that would be covered by a municipal league portion. And so part of what I've been trying to do is talk to municipal league as well as apprise them where we are, and also the potential issues that we have, because they don't do lawsuits on your behalf, but they defend lawsuits. And this is going to require both. This is going to be a heavyweight boxing match is what I'm saying. You're going to be punching and getting hit. But the thing I'm saying is something we have to protect our interests. We can't allow the city to be flooded. As I understand the mayor's concerned about it, it's because you don't want the breach of the wall, and then because the wall is breached, we only have one city, and if it's flooded, then that's it. And so this is something that is, I'm not trying to be an alarmist, but it's something that the mayor's taking very seriously, and I take very seriously. And we're trying to do whatever we can to resolve the issue. I don't have all the legal answers for you now. I'm still researching issues as to where we need to go, but we're trying to be aggressive with our approach. As the mayor said also, they have not responded to the mayor's previous letters. And basically, I think that the number that the mayor had informed me was 1.7 million that they wanted before they did anything. I would defer to the mayor on that portion of the discussion. But we also would have to engage the Corps of Engineers. They're the ones with the funds. They're the ones that did the levy. They're the ones who are going to do it. Any repairs to it. So as I said, there are a lot of moving parts to it. The city's interest is our city. We don't own the levy. We don't have authority over the levy. The Helena Improvement District has some authority. The Corps Engineers have the right of way, the easement, and all that, and it's theirs. And so I also am reaching out to the Corps of Engineers attorneys so we can look at that. But it is a complex issue. It's not a simple issue, but it's something that we're going to have to get. I anticipate there being litigation about this, and we'll keep you apprised as we go forward. I hope that answers your question. I know it sounds circular in some ways, but I don't have all the information to directly answer every potential question.
Thank you, Mr. Valley. Any questions or comments about the flood wall issue? I would simply say, add to that it exposes our city to a lot of danger. It's a serious matter, and would ask for your solidarity and support as a city to have a unified voice on it. They are, as you already know, been accessing our roads in violation of codes that have been on the books for a while. We haven't enforced them because we haven't put up signs, and we haven't put up signs, I guess, for ever since I can remember, trucks have been going down that road to the river. What they haven't been doing is stopping at the grain bins, and it's the grain bins that are crushing the seawall. I feel like it's our prerogative as a city. As you already know, we've had several citizen complaints about Arkansas Street anyway. But when you add the threat to public life, literally, that's posed by those grain bins, and now their arrogance, I think, in suggesting that we should pay them for a problem they primarily caused, then I think that's going too far.
Right. Mayor, if I may, one practical issue, we have an outstanding Freedom of Information Act request from the Helena-West relating to Schooler, who was their predecessor, and when they allowed to place the grain bins there. And we're still trying to find that information. I met with the city clerk about that today. I don't know, the mayor asked me the question, I don't know the answer. I don't ever remember it being approved by a planning commission. I don't ever remember anything, but there was a time period, I don't know when this was built. So it's a time period I wasn't city attorney. And there was a time period that we have had lapses where we didn't have city code enforcement officers. And so we're trying to see when did they get authority and who gave them authority to place it in the right of way. As a general matter, they cannot do anything that's illegal. And if you place something in the right of way, then you have to move it. It's one of those things like with your own yard. That's one of the things about it is I don't mean to be personal with one of our aldermen. One of our aldermen has a pool in their yard, and I remember they had a discussion with because their pool sits on the right of way, and the company wanted them to do some work and wanted to tear up their pool to fix the right of way. But the issue is the right of way is the right of way, and this levy is something in the public interest, and we have right of way. And from a practical standpoint, I would think that the Corps of Engineers could go right through their property because they didn't have the authority to build on the right of way, and they knew it was a levy for your building. I mean, common sense shows you that it's a levy, and they knew the purpose of the levy. So in that sense, I don't see why they're so arrogant, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Valley. Any other comments or questions about that issue? Again, I can't see you, so speak up.
I did not move that pool. It's still there. I told them where to go.
Okay. Any other? If not, that concludes our agenda for the evening. Any other business to come before the council?
I move we adjourn.
Mr. St. Columbia moves adjournment. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. I think all right, if no objection or all in favor, we'll adjourn. Thank you very much. Good night.